Hi, my name's Pharaoh, and today I'm going to take a second deep dive into the hyperdrive ranges of ships. In my previous video, I very much focused on interceptors and why they seem to be promising but then are not quite as good when you upgrade them. But today I'm going to take a very close look at hyperdrive adjacency bonuses and then touch on the spreadsheet I used to work it all out. Now, adjacency bonuses, otherwise known as synergy, are a bit of a black art. They're quite opaque and not always easy to know exactly what's happening. So here I'm going to try and explain it in my own way, not using any of the ways that others have used in the past. And I'm going to just focus on hyperdrive here and explain just what each of the different modules does when you place it next to something else, and what kind of percentages you get and how that works overall. I'm not going to go into full detail about what adjacency means across the board because I think that overcomplicates things. We're just going to focus on one attribute, hyperdrive range, in a ship. Firstly, I need to recap a finding from the previous video. When we look inside a module, by hovering over it, we can see a hyperdrive range, but that range isn't the full range that the system uses to work out what the overall hyperdrive range of the ship is. The number that it uses is actually a function of the hyperdrive bonus that the ship has, which you can only see in a save editor or by stripping down the ship as explained in the previous video. The hyperdrive bonus is a percentage modifier, so we add it as a percentage to the module. So for example, if the bonus was 23, then we would add 23% to every module in our ship. And that's the actual value of that module, which we will be using when we work out adjacencies. We also discovered that the same happens for the normal hyperdrive in a standard ship. And we discovered that for an interceptor, this is much larger, being 600 plus 6 times the bonus, where the bonus of the interceptor is going to be quite small. So let's have a look at what happens for each possible adjacency. So firstly, the simple case, when we place a module next to the core hyperdrive or crimson core in a ship. When we place it next to a hyperdrive or a crimson core, we add another 5% of the value of that overall calculation for the module to the equation. Another thing we may position a module next to is a color drive, and exactly the same thing happens. We add another 5% to the overall value of that module. So for example, if that module was next to both of these things, we would add 10% overall. And while we're talking about the various color drives like the indium drive, the emerald drive, the cadmium drive, when we position a color drive next to the hyperdrive or crimson core, we add 5% of the hyperdrive value. This is very significant for interceptors because of course the hyperdrive value is that 600 plus 6 times the bonus value, which is very high. Returning to modules for our next rule, when we place one next to the emergency warp unit, we add 6%. Lastly, a key consideration, possibly the most significant one, is when you place a module next to another module. In this case, we get a reciprocal arrangement. Both modules will take into account that they're next to a module, and both modules will add 6% of their full calculated value to the equation. So I would call this a reciprocal adjacency. Lastly, for completion, when you position an Atlas figurine into your ship, then you get a standalone bonus of 50 plus half the underlying hyperdrive bonus of the ship. So I implemented each of these rules into a spreadsheet model, and I'm not going to go into too much detail here, just to notice that it does require an accuracy of 0.01, which can only really be done by cloning modules using a save editor. Using the learning that I got from here, I'm now going to do a couple of worked examples of exactly how adjacency is applied in two different scenarios, one in an ordinary ship and one in an interceptor, and it will show how the perfect alignment is slightly different in each ship. Starting with an explorer, here we have the best setup for an explorer with the hyperdrive in the corner, and I've positioned the Atlas figurine just for convenience in the spare slot of that square. It doesn't get an adjacency. Now next to the hyperdrive we have two modules, so we get the module adjacency. And the modules are also getting an adjacency from the color drives. And the highest module we have available is connected to the other two modules. Therefore, it can get maximum mutual benefit from the reciprocal arrangement. And I've got the other color drive on the left here, and below that largest module, the emergency warp unit to maximize that. This explorer has a hyperdrive bonus of 105.4, which gives us our hyperdrive value of 205.4. This high bonus is also reflected in our modules, which have overall values of the mid 400s. This means our 5% adjacencies with the hyperdrive are going to be in the low 20s, and the 6% mutual adjacency between the modules is in the high 20s, so this is being maximized, making sure they're all three together. And here we're maximizing the emergency module because that's the highest of the remaining modules at 6%, and then the rest of these three adjacencies are slightly lower. And then of course the Atlas figurine, which here is effectively half of the hyperdrive's value. And this all equates to a pretty good score of 1945.5. Now let's take a look at the interceptor, which we know from our previous video has a much lower bonus, and let's maximize that. The core has the highest value, and because of this we're going to maximize the various color drives next to the crimson core. And then, as before, we've grouped the three modules together with the best module in the middle of the three, but we've actually grouped them around a different module. Of course, we're still getting the mutual benefit between the various modules, but we're also trying to maximize the value of the adjacency with the emergency warp unit, which is another 6%. Because the bonus is only 8.2, our module values are also much lower here. On the other hand, we are maximizing the value of the emergency warp, and we're maximizing the value of our color drives by placing them next to a very high valued crimson core. At over 30, these are the highest values we can see in our adjacencies. And while they're not as high, we are getting some values for the module adjacencies. Combined with a lower score for the Atlas figurine, we end up with a value of 1641.8. within 300 of the Explorer, which isn't too bad. So there you have it, exactly how we work out hyperdrive bonuses on ships. In the next video I'll be looking at how supercharged slots change this, but in the meantime, travel well and goodbye for now. Goodbye.